Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Rachel and I am so excited to film this video for you because this is the video where I'm going to talk to you about meeting my very first client and how it went. I am so excited to be at this point. If you've been following my videos at all, then you know that I've only been doing my bookkeeping business for about 5 weeks. And so you can go back and kind of watch my progress of how I went from absolutely no business at all to beginning my bookkeeping business and how I just got my very first client. So I am going to talk about the meeting process that I did with this first client and what we went over, and a little bit of what to expect from the interview process. So what I'll say really quickly is that I kind of thought that this might be the first time that you meet with a client. Like if you had asked me a couple of weeks ago, that would be the time where they're going to decide whether they want your services or not. But to be honest, this client already knew he wanted my services, and this was more of us getting down to the nitty-gritty of what services that would be. So I would just say that your first meeting with your very first client or any client thereafter might not really be about this big presentation of what you can do and then them saying yes or no afterwards. I had a phone conversation with my first client probably a couple of days before we met, and that was really where we talked about where his business was at that moment and whether he thought this was something that he needed or not. And to be quite frank, he had pretty much already made up his mind that this was something that he was interested in. So once we got to our first meeting, it was about just a little bit more of how the process was going to go. But I will say I was very nervous. I don't know if it was about putting myself out there or if it was because I was getting a little bit of that imposter syndrome where you second guess that you can actually do this. But I definitely was nervous. And so I kind of had to, for me, I kind of prayed about it and just made sure that I felt good about what I was providing to this person. So this is actually a person that I went to high school with, and that took some of the nerves out. But I will also say that I was probably a little bit nervous and out of my element because I invited this person to come to my home. So I don't have an office anywhere that I go to, and this is not a person that has an office of his own. He's in a construction business, and so there is no place for him to have us meet. I would really like in the future for clients for me to be able to go to their location or to maybe a coffee shop or something like that, but he lives in the area, and so I just said come on to my house. So I really wanted to make sure that things looked nice and tidy and things like that. So that's probably a little bit where my nerves came from as well. But I'll go ahead and talk about some of the important things that I had ready. So one thing on my to-do list before I had this meeting with this client was to make sure that I had my paperwork in order. Baby time. So my client interview, I had kind of written out beforehand, actually a couple of weeks ago in week number 1. You can look at some of the documents that I created. I had my questions ready to go, and there actually were quite a few things that we had already discussed on the phone, and so I didn't have to go through the entire document while he was here for my meeting. But I would say that it's really important for you to have something to kind of keep you on track to make sure that you get all the information that you need from your client interview. And so it was really helpful that I already had that prepared from week 1. And it had a sheet or a portion of it for me to fill out his name and his business address and things like that that would be important if I needed to get in contact with him. So my paperwork was there and ready to go. And I will say this about the meeting that was pretty important for anyone to just remember. You as a bookkeeper are there to listen. And it really wasn't a lot about what I had to offer, but more about learning what his business needs were and how I was going to play into that. So what I would say is that you kind of have to take some of the stress off of yourself and really just be there to listen to the business owner. Some business owners might need more prompting with how to talk about their business and their needs than others. And that's where I think some questions are gonna already written down will help you out. But really it was about listening to what his business was doing so far, what he needed, what he liked about his current systems, and what he wanted to change. And then I basically just listen, and respond in the way that I can best help him and his business. So The thing that's really important to note is that I decided in my business to offer free consultation. And so what that meant to me, and if I ever have it down in writing, then I put that it's a free 30-minute consultation. But I will just be realistic. It took about an hour for us to get through this first initial meeting. And I think that that really just depends on who your first client is. They could be a chatty Cathy, or they could be someone where it's really hard to pull the information from them in person. But nonetheless, I spent an hour and I will not charge this client for that first hour. The other reason that I'm not going to charge this first client for that hour is because I'm still feeling myself out as a bookkeeper. And so I want to make sure that the services I provide are really worthwhile and professional. And it's not that that first meeting and my time isn't worth that money. And I think that it would be totally fine if you did charge something for your first meeting, or the phone calls leading up to it, or if you did a Zoom or whatnot. But really just want to make sure that you're providing everything that that client needs. And I just didn't feel like it was necessary to charge for that at this point. However, it was really exciting that this client had just recently on their own decided that QuickBooks was the program that they wanted to use. And so this client had already gotten it on their phone, started tracking some of their mileage, looked at the receipt capture features that QuickBooks app has for your mobile device, and had already linked their bank account. So some of those things were already set up, and so a lot of the meeting was talking to them about how they were really excited to use this program, and that they felt like it was going to be a really great tool for them to get used to, especially as we're ending out the year 2020, and then they would know what they were doing. So starting January 2021, they felt like everything was going to go really smoothly. And so that's really what they wanted, the role that he wanted me to play, is helping in getting his QuickBooks organized and set up, and all the features that it has, so that he's ready to go in 2021. And so for right now, a lot of what I'm focused on is business banking transactions and categorizing them and showing him the best workflows so that everything stays managed properly. But in this first meeting, it was really important that while I listened to him talk about how he liked QuickBooks and he was excited to go that way, that I also got logged into QuickBooks as his accountant. And so what we did was I got him to log on and invite me as an accountant in his QuickBooks, and then I logged him out of my personal computer and logged in myself. If he had brought his own computer, we would have just done it that way. But I will say that this client decided to sign up for QuickBooks on their own, and so they get the 3-month special deal, I guess you would call it, from QuickBooks, but they did not sign up through me. So I'll probably make a different video about client onboarding in maybe a couple of weeks, about how it goes with adding a new client and whether you add them or whether they add you as the accountant in QuickBooks, but it's pretty self-explanatory. It just really has to deal with their subscription and the deal that they get. So we really just got to know each other and the business transactions, a lot about how I thought I could help. And once I got QuickBooks up on my computer, I could then get to work on my own after the meeting. And so it's really important to leave the meeting knowing where I was going to go and what I was going to do. And so what I quoted this client was that I would work for 2 hours at an hourly rate. I would do a 2-hour work for sure, guaranteed. And then I would give them an estimate of how long I thought it would take after that 2 hours to get QuickBooks set up, or whatever we were working on, whatever whatever the next task was after I finished those 2 hours. So, and I'll talk a little bit about my first billing and things like that, and a little bit more of what exactly I did for this client in QuickBooks in my next video, which we'll talk all about week 6 of where I really get down to the work. But I would say that my first meeting with my first client went really well. It definitely made me feel professional and like a real bookkeeper, so I will no longer be using air quotes. I am a bookkeeper, and hopefully you will use this video to help you succeed in your first meeting with your first client.